right, thanks so much, Marcy and Trish and Gabe and Annette for those presentations. And thank you also for staying with us as we now turn our attention to a few questions that have come in during the course of your presentations. Folks, if you have any questions for any of our panelists, there's still time for you to drop those into your Q&A window near the bottom of the screen. We'll get to as many as we can in the remaining 15 minutes or so that we have together today. Trish and Marcy, the first question can be for either or both of you. Is there a time frame or deadline that WCB will make a decision on whether or not to accept a WCB claim? We have a current situation in which we're waiting almost 3 months for a decision on whether the claim will be accepted. Trish or Marcy?
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mark. Sorry, Mark and Marcy are too close. I can take that one. First of all, yes, please do call into our Ask WCB inquiry line about that particular case. We can't talk about particular cases in this forum, but we will definitely take a look at that particular case because that does seem extraordinarily long. We do aim to have our decisions on claims made as quickly as possible, aiming for less than 2 weeks. However, we're not currently meeting our target. Our average in the first quarter of this year was 19 days compared to 22 last year. And this is part of the reason we're undertaking transformation. One of the first things we piloted in the first quarter of this year was a new adjudication model. We are just starting to implement that now, but we are already starting to see some decline in the backlog of customers waiting for adjudication decisions. So please do contact us so we can follow up on that specific case. Sometimes claims can take longer to adjudicate than others, depending on the individual circumstances of the claim or if we're waiting on medical information. And we also need to confirm there's a workplace connection to the injury, but please do follow up with us directly so we can look into your particular situation.
Thank you. Also for Trish or Marcy, does WCB premium include psychological injuries?
I think that might be one for Gabe.
I can speak to that one. So the way WCB premiums are set is every employer gets assigned to a classification code, and then how the premiums are determined looks at the costs that are occurring in that industry, which would include the cost of psychological injuries.
Great. Thank you. I have a question for Gabe. Do you check to see that companies have WCB?
So if I'm interpreting that question correctly, if that's a question more around, do we do a targeted kind of check to see if there's companies that are out there that aren't reporting with us? In the past, we have leveraged things like partnerships with CRA that we can do a comparison. So we don't currently have anything in the works that's specific. We do get tips occasionally that we do follow up on. So that's always an option too. If you are suspecting that maybe someone's not following rules, you can always refer them our way and we can follow up. But we are looking at different partnerships and how we can leverage that and learning from our WCBs from other provinces as well, in terms of how do we make sure that the people that should be part of the system are truly part of the system. So that is part of our future state as well, is to make sure that keeping the system fair. So we are going to be exploring more of a compliance approach going forward. So stay tuned for more on that one.
Thanks, Gabe. Another question for you. Does a company have to list all the contractors working under them on their annual return? And do those contractors working under us need to have their own Sask WCB?
Yes, so you should report all your contractors. We go through a process where we check. If they have their own account, then you don't have to pay anything for them, but it is a good practice to get all contractors. There are certain requirements that you must meet to have or be eligible for a WCB account. So we go through that through our registration process. So a good example of that might be someone coming in from a different province that might not be here for long enough to meet our requirements. So in those cases, they would be considered workers of you. But great practice is to always just report all your contractors, and then we do our due diligence on our end to make sure that we're accounting for everybody accordingly. If you have any specific questions, please contact our Employer Services Department.
Someone writes, we've never had a claim before, and this year we've had our first workplace injury. What steps should we follow to manage this claim properly?
Thanks, Mark. I can take that one. So as mentioned in the presentation, the first thing would be to seek medical attention for that employee to make sure that they're getting the medical attention they need if they need it immediately. The employee needs to report that to the employer and also report it to WCB on a form called the W1. So the first form into us, report of injury. Next, the employer would report it to WCB. So that form is called an E1, so the employer's first form. And when the employee goes to seek medical treatment, they should also let the medical provider know that it's a WCB suspected claim so that they can send the information, the report into us. So once we've received even one of those reports, we can start to begin to register the claim. Ideally, the more information we have sooner at the beginning of the request, the sooner we can make a decision. So once we have information, we'll be reviewing that information to determine whether it was, again, an injury that occurred at work and an allowable claim. Once it's accepted, we would begin collaborating with the worker, the employer, and any of their healthcare team members to come up with a recovery and return to work plan that we would put into place. So as I mentioned, there'd be some responsibilities for the worker in terms of participating in that program, and also responsibilities of the employer to ensure that they're providing time off for the program and also accommodated duties if needed in the workplace. And then at that point as well, WCB will be administering the benefits, whether it's a replacement of your salary or time off to attend appointments if you're still working but need some medical attention for your injury. And I think, as we've all mentioned too, we have an inquiry line and ask WCB.
Will the changes allow the worker to return to work before the doctor has allowed them to return, especially when a return to work program is available at the facility?
Thanks, Mark. Yes, well, it's really important, as I mentioned, for us to work collaboratively with the medical team to ensure a safe return of that employee to their duties, whether they're regular duties resuming or accommodated duties. Important that physicians understand whether or not the plan could cause harm, and that's the information that we need from them to provide. So we need to make sure there is a safe return to work. However, we can go about it in different ways. So we want to collaborate to find a good solution that works for the employee and the employer and is safe according to the medical advice.
Thank you. Gabe, if the employer pays time loss versus WCB, is there an advantage?
I might actually punt that one back to the operations folks for the benefits of an employer paid claim. Either Trish or Marcy.
Want me to jump into that one?
Sure, Marcy.
Either way, if there's time loss on a claim related to an injury, an employer can pay that, and then we reimburse the employers. The employer's keeping their employee on payroll, and then we reimburse the employer. If it's worker paid, then we're paying the worker directly. There is no advantage to the employer.
I have another one for you, Gabe. We are a manufacturing plant that supplies for the construction industry. However, we are an M code rate, not B rate, and therefore we don't receive the benefits of courses discounted. And the question is, why are these codes so very different?
So our classification structure is based on the nature of a company's industrial undertaking. So you're classified and lumped with similar risk categories. So manufacturing can look very different than construction, and it can also look very similar. But in this regards, if you do have specific questions related to your classification, you can always contact Employer Services, and we can look at your unique classification in the case that you are misclassified. And I think what you're referring to with the benefits of courses is through safety associations that offer discounts to their members if they're assigned to certain classification codes. So I'd encourage you to talk to the safety associations themselves as well if there's anything specific that they can offer for you there. But if it is related to your specific classification, please contact us and we can take a closer look to see if you need to be reclassified.
Great, thank you. We're coming back again to you, Gabe. If my contractor is part of a voluntary industry and isn't part of WCB, is my business responsible for the premiums on the labor portion of my contract with them?
Yes, that is correct. So if they don't have coverage in their own right, they would be considered a worker of your company, and you would be responsible for the premiums on behalf of the labor portion of that contract. If they have not opted into their own coverage with that voluntary account. So a letter of good standing would be a great way to see if they have their own account.
Tremendous. Thank you, Gabe. We'll give you a little rest now, and we'll shift over to Annette. Here's the next question. In the last few years, our company has put a huge focus on safety training and building a great safety management system. Where can we go to get more safety and prevention supports, tools, and training?
Thanks for the question, Mark. As I mentioned in the presentation, we do have account managers who are focused on industry-specific rate codes. So we can certainly give you that information. And if you contact us through the Employer Resource Center and tell us which industry you belong to, we can connect you up with your account manager. Also, if your rate code belongs to a safety association, we absolutely refer you to that safety association who has industry-specific training and help with safety management systems and moving forward in injury prevention initiatives. But we certainly have a lot of resources for employers to use, and having a face-to-face meeting with an account manager can really help you with knowing where to go and how to access more resources.
All right, well, we're down to our last few minutes. We've got time for just a couple more questions. Trish or Marcy, here's a question. During the claim investigation, do you check for prior claims?
Marcy, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not specifically sure what claim investigations referring to, or if it's just when we get a claim and we're looking at a new claim, do we look at prior claims? We absolutely do. Just to gather information and ensure we're supporting that customer as best we can. If there's more questions on that haven't been answered, maybe send something to Ask WCB if I misinterpreted that question.
Great, thank you. Trish, here's a question. I injured my back at work. My employer has been great, supporting me to get back on my feet. I'm supposed to return to work pretty soon, but I'm really nervous. I never thought I would find myself in this position. Are there supports for me as I return to work?
Yes, they should definitely speak with their case manager. They can assist with any services they might need to support them back to work. So it would be something that would be reviewed as part of their claim to see if it could be an allowable support for them. Marcy, would you add anything to that response?
No, I think that's a good summary.
Okay.
Great, thank you, Trish. One final question, and then we'll probably need to wrap things up today. For Gabe, do government employers pay WCB surcharges for accepted claims?
So if an employer is assigned to our G51 rate code, that is considered government. So if they are part of that G51 rate code, they are not eligible for our experience rating program and only pay the base industry rate. That is the only industry that is not eligible for our experience rating program.
Great. Thanks very much to our panelists for the helpful information and for those of you who posted questions. Folks, if any of your questions have not been answered, if you didn't quite get to typing it or we didn't get to you, you can email us for answers to those questions. The address is askwcb@wcbsask.com. That's askwcb@wcbsask.com.